Now, I like Republicans. They're friendly guys. When things go wrong, they sympathize. They've got the slogans, they've got the cures. They've got theirs, and you get yours. By and by. They work together. They've got a team that the newspapers hold in the highest esteem. They once sold soap and toothpaste, too. Now they're down in Washington for me and you. Love that team. Like their style. Makes me feel so good. Now the government's big and it keeps them busy. They can't run it themselves or they'd soon get dizzy. So they got a lot of fellers kind of helping them out who know what Wall Street's all about. The number one helper in the whole shebang is a fella named Humphrey, the leader of the gang. I don't mean Hubert, Minnesota's pride and joy. I mean Trickle-Down George, the banker's boy. George says we gotta balance the budget. Now when he says we, he means you. And me, but not old George. Now, Trickle-Down George, he's in charge of the taxes. He's the big boy in the Washington Wall Street axis. He wouldn't cut the taxes for you and me. He says that's irresponsibility. But for the big fat cats, he swings his axe. Biff, bang, whoosh, down comes their tax. But don't worry, brother. You'll soak up a couple of drops when she trickles down. Another little helper is Douglas McKay. He's the man in charge of the giveaway. He's given away oil and public power, all in the name of Eisenhower. Though some folks scowl and some folks frown, he'll give it away if it's not nailed down. And the elephant says with those twinkling eyes, it all helps private enterprise. I love that too. Like that crusade. Give away, give away, give away, Dixon Yates. Another little helper that they once had is Ovita Culp-Hobby, and her story's real sad. No member of the cabinet was ever sweeter or less efficient than dear Ovita. She'd look good on the cover of Vogue magazine, but she sure made a mess of the Salk vaccine. And the schools? Why, the schools are jammed from the floors to the roof, but Ovita Culp-Hobby said, that's no proof that schools must have some government aid. We've got to have another big study made, grade by grade. Well, by then the kids will be wearing long pants and it'll be too late to give them another chance. That was the secretary of very little health, inadequate education, and not much welfare. Well, a very special helper in the GOP crew is Charles E. Wilson with the GM View. He says what's good for General Motors is good for me and you. But as Mr. Chrysler knows, it ain't necessarily true. Charlie loves dogs, but he doesn't like folks. When men are out of work, he just grins and makes jokes. He's got an adding machine where his heart ought to be, but he's the GM pride of the GOP. Love that team. Love that Charlie Wilson. Chevrolet Coupe. There's another hired man that we must mention, that old mother hen, Ezra Taft Benson. He's the farmer's friend. He helps them out in feast and famine, in flood and drought. He's the flexible price man. He wants them limp, even if farmers have to starve and scrimp. And if this means a lot of good farmers go bust, the word comes from Ezra, in flexibility we trust. I love that team. Sliding scale, like his style. Now, there are a few fellows in the government who would never think of taking a single cent, but they don't mind trying out their luck at picking up on the side a buck, or two, or three, or four, or more. Yes, it's a big business government from A to Z, and there's not much room for you and me. There's room for Wall Street and U.S. Steel, and if you happen to be a GM wheel, you'll roll, brother. Automatic shift, power steering, fingertip control. There's one big helper that we can't forget. That's Tricky Dick Nixon, the Republican pet. He's a fine tall lad with a big sharp axe, likes to plant it in other people's backs. Now Dick goes around spreading hate and fear, painting loyal Americans with a big black smear, but the elephant smiles and says, Dick's my boy, he's the administration's pride and joy. Love that team. Like their style. Tricky Dick. Now, I've told you all about the Republican team. The president holds them in the highest esteem. They may pick your pockets and blacken your name and play you for a sucker in the giveaway game. But the newspapers love this jolly crew, which is doing such a job on me and you. They're with them. Every single man, they love that dynamic conservative plan. That team, they're moderate progressives. They stumble forward every time somebody shoves them. They're riding on the old Republican track, one step forward and 2 steps back. But I love that team. Like their style. Crazy about that crusade. Love that team.